tonight?
Call to order, please rise and join the committee for the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please note that this meeting is being electronically recorded. Before we move on to our agenda, there are just a couple of announcements. There's actually several announcements tonight, so these may be interspersed throughout the meeting. The first is, as we discussed last week, the school committee has authorized a search committee for our next special education director. I was in touch with the superintendent throughout the course of last week. As I said last week, Ms. Singer will be co-chairing the search committee along with Mr. Sheehan. And tonight I'll be announcing the appointments to the remainder of that committee. In addition to Mr. Sheehan and Ms. Singer, Angela Ferrara, the chair of the Attleboro Special Education Parents Advisory Council, Gail Marr, a special education staff member, Karen Spina, a special education teacher at the high school, Maureen Morgan, the coordinator of the Early Learning Center, Scott Johnson, the principal of Hill Roberts Elementary School, and Andy Bowles, the principal of Coelho Middle School. So the superintendent and I we're attempting to put together a committee that would represent the various facets of the school system. I'm grateful both to Ms. Singer and to the superintendent for their willingness to take a leadership position with regard to this search, and that group will be convening in the coming days. The application deadline is on Friday, and they'll be moving expeditiously to fill that position. If there are any questions related to this, anything Ms. Singer or Mr. Sheehan want to add, other than that you're looking forward to working on this? And
I think it's a very good committee, and I think that we'll be able to chair the committee to a satisfactory conclusion.
good.
I as well. Sure.
Enough said, as they say. Okay, so we're moving on now. Our first item on our agenda is our recognition of some students and staff who have had a particularly productive summer, and they are looking forward, I'm sure, to a productive school year. And one of our staff members from Brennan Middle School, Ms. Clark, is here. I know Ms. Saltzman is here as well. If the two of you maybe could come up and introduce the program so we know what exactly we are honoring our students for tonight. Our student guests tonight are students who participated in the Best Buddies National Conference in Bloomington, Indiana. The Best Buddies program is one that has been spoken about at this table several times in the past. I know many members of the community are grateful for all the work that it does in Brennan, but if Ms. Saltzman and Ms. Clark want to share anything or elaborate upon that, now would be a good time to do that.
Sure. First, I don't want to take any thunder away because they're the ones that do all of the wonderful work, but Best Buddies provides an implicit curriculum for all our students as they matriculate through our school, whether they are involved personally in Best Buddies as being a peer buddy or if they're just a student there. And what I mean by that is it helps all of our students to develop a deep compassion for others. They don't even understand it as a curriculum, but I say that because they are really, truly learning through the course of their matriculation through Brennan. And they also develop an understanding that no matter who you are and no matter who the people are, they bring something positive to the table into every situation that there is. So I'm just so very proud of Ms. Clark and Ms. Heller for being the advisors to Best Buddy, and for the students here that she's going to talk about and introduce that went out to Indianapolis for the annual Best Buddies convention, I think is what, the conference, I think is what the best word is. Yes.
So
Extravaganza, maybe.
we had 3 students, Jennifer Larson, Eleni DeFoulis, and Jenna Garapi, get on a plane and fly all the way out to Indiana. And they were joined by Mrs. Heller, who is unable to join us tonight. And what the conference is you have to have your chapter president, and we were fortunate enough to send our president, vice president, and buddy director. And they go and they sit in conferences. They leave Friday and they return on Monday. And they talk about different ways to, lead your program. The whole idea is for the students to kind of guide the program and the advisors just to support them along the way. And we have about 65 students in our club. We meet every other week, and these students kind of come up with some activities to create one-to-one friendships. And they also are required to do some fundraising, which they have come up with some different ideas of things to do. We need to look at fundraising to also help to do some community service as well. We are required to do community service. So some of the activities might just be to get to know your buddy, have hot chocolate, watch a movie, and other days they might be working on placemats that we've donated to different church groups for Thanksgiving meals. So they had to sit and find out all different ways that other schools and communities are doing these programs to outreach, and they learned a lot about online ways of doing things as well. And they can kind of speak a little more about that.
Sure. You mentioned that there's fundraising. Are the T-shirts, like the one that you're wearing and some of the students are wearing, are those for sale?
This is actually, they did the Best Buddies cheerleading for Tom Brady.
Okay.
So this is actually, and a few of them are also wearing their cheerleading T-shirts that we received.
Okay.
We do have T-shirts that we order for the group, and we typically order enough because we only have the funds to supply them for our group.
Okay.
And we don't have the extra funds to buy extras to sell them. But
Okay.
we're looking to do, they have friendship walks, is what they call them, through Best Buddies. And it's going to be hopefully happening this year. And it would be sent out through the Sun Chronicle newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
We're also looking to have some sort of movie night where we can have everyone in the community welcome to come, maybe sell some popcorn, and they can pay a small fee to come in to watch the movie.
Okay. What exactly is a friendship walk for those who aren't familiar?
It would just be a local, around the area, short walk.
But used as a fundraiser? Or?
We use it as a fundraiser, exactly. So it's friendship because Best Buddies is you're creating one-to-one friendship, so that's the idea behind it, and that would help support our group.
Okay, great. Are there any questions from the committee for the staff members before we bring the students up? How long has Brennan had the Best Buddies program? Is there?
I can look to you on that one too.
It's
Back
Mrs.
to
Heller
88.
probably has that answer.
Okay.
It's been 5 or 6 years.
It's longer. It was there. I've been
Okay.
starting my 6th year
Okay.
at Brennan, and it was there before me.
Okay.
I'd say it's about 3 or 4 years prior to that. So we're probably coming up to 10 years, I'd say.
Okay, great. Okay, so the students were sort of clamoring outside to determine who was going to do the speaking. I think that's their estimation of what was going on. So if you guys could come up and maybe join Ms. Clark and Ms. Saltzman, and the committee has some citations that we'd like to present to you. If you have to stand, you get to come back and you get the first chair next time. It'll all work out. We'll start with Ms. Larson. You're the incoming president of the Best Buddies, is that correct?
Yes.
And are you excited about that? Anything you're particularly looking forward to? Or?
Yeah, I think it'll be nice. They showed us so many new things to do with the club, so it'll just be really exciting to get it started.
Can you reveal any of the surprises of this
Yeah.
year, or are they confidential?
No. Well, just like some of the things that Miss Clark was talking about, like the movie nights and different fundraisers that would be fun to do. So.
Sure. Okay. Mr. Fullis, Ms. Garapi, do you have any particularly fun experiences that you had in Indiana? I heard there was one.
We did have a dance, like a friendship dance. It was really fun.
There you go. And it was a worthwhile trip. You felt like the.
Yes, definitely. We learned a lot. I think we learned a lot.
Great.
It was
Okay.
very interesting.
Well, we thank you very much for representing the school district and Brennan Middle School, going out and doing that on a national level. It's a very important program. I think you all know that even more so than we do. And I would invite Mrs. Scales to read the first citation, which the citations are generally identical. So perhaps Mrs. Scales could read the citation and the members could present them.
The Attleboro School Committee hereby commends Eleni DeFoulis and Jennifer and Renee for representing the Attleboro School District at the Best Buddies International Leadership Conference in Bloomington, Indiana, and for her dedication to the Best Buddies program at Brennan Middle School. It is with sincere gratitude that the Attleboro School Committee extends its appreciation for making the Attleboro schools a better place to learn for all students.
So congratulations and thank you very much. And maybe if you guys could present.
Guess which one I have.
We didn't mention that they won't. Okay.
Thank you very much again for coming. If any of the committee members have other comments about Best Buddies or this.
I think most importantly, I don't think it was mentioned that Brennan Middle School was once again first place for middle schools in Massachusetts.
Chapter of the year.
Chapter of the year in Massachusetts, which is huge. So
Can I have the citations back so I can?
So we could just check that. So,
That's
very
not-
well done.
It's not the first time they've won that
And it's
either.
not the first time. So keep up the good work.
Congratulations again, and thank you to each of you for coming in. And I just wanted to add one last comment. Ms. Saltzman was talking about sort of using the word curriculum, and I do think at times with programs like Best Buddies and some of the other programs that our students are engaged in, I don't know if we always fully recognize the degree, how important that is for achieving our goal of educating the whole child and making sure that every child has the opportunities to be engaged in the school system and have those types of opportunities. And I think I know that one of the things that we'll be working on over the course of this year is looking at our after-school programs in their entirety and seeing how we can further those opportunities and grow those. So that way, we really do have schools that are operating at their full capacity. So, Mrs. Skills?
And I've always been an advocate to get that program in the other middle schools as well, if ever there's an opportunity. I think it would be beneficial for both, all the programs, all the schools, I mean.
Well, the committee has asked the administration to prepare a comprehensive report on after-school programming, and I think this is a good avenue for you to further that conversation and see what we can do to remove whatever obstacles are currently getting in the way in the other schools. Because especially if it's generally speaking, if something is working that well, where you're winning awards at a national level, and it's been around at one school long enough where nobody can remember when it started, that's a good sign that we should spread it to the other buildings, I think. So thank you again for coming in. We appreciate it. Okay, moving on to the approval of the minutes for previous meetings. There are several meetings and several minutes from meetings that we'll be approving tonight. I did ask the members of the committee to let me know if we could get up to where we needed to in terms of reviewing them. I have not heard from anyone that we haven't finished them, so is there any objection to approving the minutes in their totality?
There's one that I want to abstain from, the one that I was not, so.
Okay, which one
That's
would
the
that be?
June 2nd.
June 2nd, sure. Okay, and so there were slight, mostly typographical amendments that were brought forward by Mr. Storrs, Mr. Withers, I don't think there's, and all of those have been applied to the minutes, correct, Ms. Nelson? Thank you. Mr. Withers,
There was one substantive change to
with the voting?
with the voting, correct?
And I think that was applied as well. Okay. So the minutes are now clarified, and I'll offer a motion to approve the minutes from May 19th, 2014, May 27th, 2014, June 12th, 2014, June 16th, 2014, and June 25th, 2014.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Just thank you to Ms. Larson, Ms. Nelson for working through these. It's a fun summer activity when other people are at the beach and working on the minutes. And we're grateful to you.
Miss Nelson does all the work, so
I know, but I want to be,
just before we.
no, it's a fair point. It's a fair. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. A motion to approve the minutes of June 2nd, 2014.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain?
One abstention. Motion passes. And that does it for our minutes. And thank you again, Brennan Crud. See you soon. Okay, our next item on the agenda is our consent agenda, but we're going to skip that because we do have some guests here, and I want to make sure that we're respectful of their time. Our municipal council president, Mr. Cook, is here, and I've asked him to join the committee. As the committee knows, Mr. Cook and I have, over the course of this term, been making a point to provide periodic briefings to the two governing bodies of the Attleboro community, the municipal council and the school committee. So this is Mr. Cook's second time with us tonight. I promised him there would be questions, so I hope the committee doesn't make me look like a liar there. But I think that these briefings have provided a good opportunity to open and further the dialogue between the committee and the council. And we've had all types of dialogue between the committee and the council over the course of this term, and I think that's important and part of the process. So, Mr. Cook and I do have an announcement of sorts that we'll be making tonight about a special joint endeavor that the committee and the council will be engaging in later this fall. But I would just start with just ask if Mr. Cook has any general comments or anything he'd like to share with the committee tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. And again, I'd like to thank Chairman Murphy and the members of the school committee, as well as members of the administration, for allowing me to be here. And as Chairman Murphy had mentioned, this is something that he and I had spoken about earlier in the fall kind of thing, but in which we'd be making appearances before each other's boards, just to keep each other informed about what's going on our respective boards, rather than relying on what we might catch on TV or what we might read in the newspaper. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I appreciate, Dave, for your coming to a couple of our meetings. And I know there have been several members of the school committee who have also come to our meetings in the past, and you're always welcome. So it's, I think the more that we can do to open up dialogue with each other and let each other know what's going on, I think the better our constituents collectively and our community is actually served. During the summer, we have a very abbreviated schedule, similar to what school committee has. For years, we would meet only once in July and once in August, but we discovered that created quite a backlog of work, and the July meeting tended to be a very long meeting because in the end of June, we're always dealing with the budget and other matters of that nature, so a lot of things get kind of put aside. So it always created a long meeting for July, and then when we came back the day after Labor Day, that was usually a very long meeting too, as we're trying to get caught up. So a few years ago, we had embarked on the idea of having, in addition to the regular meeting, there would be one special meeting, and then we changed our rules a few months back so that we now have a set regular meeting on the third Tuesday and the third Thursday of both July and August, and we found that actually works much better. So this is the week of meetings here tonight, then tomorrow night, and then again on Thursday we'll be having a meeting.
That's why we had you come up early, so that way you don't have to stay with us.
That's all right. Not a problem. I enjoy seeing what's going on and learning more about the work that all of you are doing, which on a personal note I would say I'm personally very pleased by the progress being made in the schools, the efforts being made by the administration, school committee. I know there's a lot of issues that we still have to work with, but overall, I'm as a constituent, as a resident of this community, I'm very pleased with that. At our meeting in July, we actually, just to give you a brief update, we had a number of presentations, at that meeting by people from the community. One of them was Representative Poria. She's always hosted this annual senior fair, and the proceeds from that she then splits among the 3 communities that she represents. So she had appeared before the council to present a check in the amount of $3,000 to Madeline McNeely of the Council on Aging for ongoing services at that level of our city government. We also had Joan Pilkington-Smith from the library. I don't know if she's made a presentation to you.
Well,
Or is she going to be doing that?
She'll be doing that in a sort of. She'll be doing that. I'll elaborate upon that when we get to our.
Okay, then I won't go into that now, but she appeared before us, as she often does in July, just to let us know what the topic of the book is. It is of a historical nature. It's a novel, and I'm looking forward to a lot of the activities associated with that. We also had representatives of Capron Park, or Friends of Capron Park Zoo, make a presentation, and as you may have known over the last, I think, 3 years, they have had an annual event to raise funds, and this year it's actually, they presented this Passport to India coming up on the 13th of September. Great opportunity to have a very enjoyable night at the zoo and to learn more about not only about India, but also to see money being raised that'll benefit the zoo, something which in recent years the Friends of Capron Park Zoo have done a tremendous job of not only raising funds, but doing things to further a lot of the programs there. And the zoo is one of our gems in this particular city. We also had the director of the ARA, the former mayor, Judy Robbins, appear to make a presentation updating us on the ARA activities. This is something that actually when I was the then finance chair that I had started, because as finance chair I was a liaison with the ARA, and rather than wait for them to come in, we had started a program when I was finance chair of having the representatives of ARA come in and give us an update regularly on the various programs. Very similar to what Dave and I are doing now, we're trying to do between our 2 boards, trying to open up communication and share information back and forth. So she actually came in and made a presentation to us in terms of giving us an update on all the various projects. And speaking of which, as you probably saw during the summer, and some of you may have been away and may have missed it, but there were a couple of very exciting things that happened during the summer. One was, this was kind of a milder one, was Milestone for the City, in which the last beam going onto Renaissance Place downtown was being raised into position. And before they did that, they actually they painted the beam white, and then they asked various city officials and some of the construction people and people involved to actually sign it. And then, as is very typical in programs of that type, they hoist it with both the American flag on it and an evergreen tree, which is very typical. If you stand over near the new ITC Center and look at it, I don't think it's been covered up yet. Eventually it'll be covered up, and as one wag remarked, 100 years from now, some archaeologists will find this and wonder, who are these people? So a few of us who signed actually put our titles beside it, but it was a impromptu but a very good event. And then a few days later, this made the news, made television, was the governor came to town for a groundbreaking ceremony for the Riverfront Drive Parkway. Actually, the governor spent quite a bit of time. Sometimes some of these officials are only there for a short amount of time, but he actually spent quite a bit of time talking to people before it began, and then afterwards, actually, about the projects. He was asking a lot of questions about some of the other projects that were going on. So it was actually there was a tremendous turnout for that particular event. That was covered not only by AACS, but by some of the Boston stations, as well as the Rhode Island, New Bedford stations. So that was a couple of key things that showed some of the progress that we're making along the ARA front after years of delay, frustration, and a lot of the other projects are moving forward along that line. So it was very good to actually see that happen. Again, one of the things, as we all know, the concession stand is going up. That's under your control. Barry Lacasse, I know, is doing a lot of work on that. I'll admit, I signed up to be part of it. I haven't been able to get down. I talked to Barry.
So now you've signed up twice, once
right.
on TV and
I
once.
actually had talked to Barry Lacasse this morning about this and some other matters, and I told him that I think that this Saturday, finally, I'll be able to actually be there. So He told me it starts at 7 a.m., so I better not be late. Tomorrow is going to be, as I mentioned, a regular meeting, Thursday night again, although both of them are regular meetings. On the Thursday night meeting, we'll be doing more committee work and voting things out of committees following the committee meeting time. I do anticipate from conversations I have with the mayor coming in and just making some comments relative to some of the things that will be in his communication, similar to what he did in July, and that way that affords the council the opportunity to ask any questions on any of the items that came down, since on Thursday night we will be dealing with a lot of those matters, not all of them, but a lot of them, and then voting them out later that particular evening.
And I think that might be a question just related to that. Just if you could perhaps give the committee a sense as to the process that will unfold this week. When Mr. Furtado and Mayor Dumas presented at that meeting that you were
Right.
referring to in July, I was under the impression that there would be a request coming down from the mayor. I don't know if that request has been made or exactly what stage of the process that's in, but
Right, yeah.
this request related to the transportation funding.
Correct, yeah. That information that was provided by Mr. Furtado and the mayor was great. I'm hoping we've all had a chance to get through all the
Good
material and so
reading.
forth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I saw
good
a
su-
lot of city councilors on the beach this summer thumbing through the three-ring binders.
I'm
so-
glad to hear that. Because we haven't met since the 17th of July, but my understanding is that there will be something coming down in the mayor's communication tomorrow.
Okay.
We have not received it yet because, again, we last met on the 17th, so we are meeting tomorrow night, but I anticipate from conversations that I've had that I expect that some additional information as a follow-up to the presentation that was made on that particular night will be coming down tomorrow, and I expect that we'll be getting more details at that time.
Okay.
So
thank
I don't know much more than
Okay,
that. I'm not sure how much at liberty I am to say
know how,
at this point.
whether the mayor's communication happened to arrive.
No.
Uh,
Usually in the mayor's communication, it doesn't come down because until sometime during the day.
Okay.
Usually on that day, I usually see it before the meeting, but there are sometimes, or usually before the end of the day rather at
Okay.
City Hall, but sometimes, depending upon when it comes down, but there are things that are being added in and so forth. So we usually don't get it really until the day of the meeting, so I have not seen it yet.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure what the content is.
Okay, I'm eager to get to the committee's questions, but I just want to frame one issue in particular related to this transportation piece, because frankly, it's been misreported a couple of times.
Right.
The sequence, the soap opera of the transportation funding process was as follows. On May 19th, this school committee, on the recommendation of our administration, approved a budgetary request for transportation funding of approximately $3.78 million. That request, as it always does, goes to the mayor, who then makes a recommendation to the municipal council. The mayor's office, when that recommendation came down, there had been a reduction in the transportation budget. It was one that there was continuous communication about between the mayor and the school department. Frankly, the actual discrepancy between the approximately 3.5 and approximately 3.8 it's a little bit of a misnomer, because there were aspects included in our total that were not included in the mayor's total. So there was not a particularly wide gulf between our request and the mayor's recommendation. There was, as President Cook knows and as this committee knows, a particularly wide gulf between the number that was ultimately approved by the municipal council on June 24th. And that was part of, I think, what led to some consternation amongst committee members and some questioning as to exactly what the rationale was. But it has been reported multiple times, despite our efforts to communicate as loudly as we possibly can, that our request was for 3.78, with the caveat that because there are variables that the school department cannot control, there's no promise that there won't be fluctuations beyond that. So when it's reported over and over again that it's a 3.4 request that this committee made, that is inaccurate.
Right.
That was approximately the recommendation of the mayor, but this committee did request the larger number based partly on the guidance provided by the municipal council during our various meetings over the past several months. So I just wanted to make sure that that was out there. But if there are questions for President Cook, Mrs. Gills?
I just had a quick,
Yes.
as extensive as the binder was that Mr. Furtado put together, it appears that there was even more questions, so have all those questions been answered and?
I'm not sure they've all been answered at this point, because if I remember correctly, on that particular night, there were not a lot of questions, and we just gotten it. In fact, I saw it moments before the meeting began. I was given a copy of it, and then it was distributed at that time, and nobody really had a chance really to go through it at that point. So I would imagine that there will be, if I remember correctly, I had said to people, make sure that you look this over, and when we have the meeting, I totally anticipated that at the first meeting in August, we would be getting additional information, and I figured at that time, there would probably be more of a give and take on it. So I'm not sure at this point if all the questions have been answered or not. I'm probably leaning towards no, that they haven't at this point, only because of the fact of, we got it at that meeting, and there wasn't time
Sure.
really to go through it at that time.
And I think if you
And
could
that's why I'd
just-
ask people to
sure.
read it over.
And if you could just relay to the municipal council Mr. Furtado's 24-hour availability,
Yes.
I know that he and I would appreciate
Right.
that.
Right,
And if you need a cell phone number or home address, whatever.
okay.
Are there any other-
I will say that relative to the transportation, the whole transportation issue, again, I pledge my support to working to resolve this. I mean, I was aware, even as a council, was debating over the issue, and over what to do and what the final result was. I mean, obviously, I think for both of our bodies, I think I would be correct in saying that there's a certain amount of frustration over the whole process, not just in June, but over, in more recent months. And I'm hoping that's something that, working together, we're going to be able to resolve, those issues. I think, everybody's had a chance to voice their frustration, and now I believe it's time that we can just focus on the issue at hand, resolving this particular problem. I think that the information contained in the notebook gives us a good direction going forward about what needs to be done and the direction that we're actually going to be going. And I look forward to resolving this in the near future. But
Yeah.
again, I'm well aware. I say we are well aware of the difference in the figures that were presented by this honorable body, by the mayor, and then the final decision was by the council as well.
Which, I mean, frankly, given the complexity of this issue and
Yes.
all the different variables involved, it shouldn't come as a galloping shock that different entities are coming out with different numbers. I think that, as long as the numbers have a sound rationale behind them, then I think, all of us feel comfortable standing behind them. But I think the other principle that really needs, and this is frankly where we did not do as good of a job in the previous year that we should have, is we did not communicate clearly enough the degree to which some of these aspects are out of our control.
True.
And that's something that's just a reality that we have to deal with. But I think we've put the processes in place, and I know Mr. Furtado and Mr. Rose and their staffs have been working hard to resolve these issues throughout the summer. So
Right. And again, as I said, I pledge my support to working with Mr. Rose and Mr. Furtado to, bring this to a resolution, because, the bottom line is, no matter, despite all the saber rattling that has gone on, there's a couple of realities here. School starting in 2 weeks, number one. And related to that is there are going to be children who are going to be riding buses.
Yep.
Number two, somebody's going to have to pay for that, and it's going to be, it's going to be the taxpayers of the city, paying for it.
Mhm.
And as I've said on so many occasions, when the citizens of Attleboro write out their checks, when they pay their quarterly real estate to the city, they're not making out to the City of Attleboro Fire Department, or the City of Attleboro School Committee, the City of Attleboro Municipal Council, and they're making out to the City of Attleboro. And it's to me, it's an exercise in faith that they expect that their hard-earned money will be used wisely to provide the services that all of our citizens need. And, again, at this point, I think we're ready to move on and start to, deal with the issue, work together to resolve it.
we look forward to that as well.
I'm looking forward to that.
Any other questions or comments for President Cook? Mr. Larson?
I have a couple questions, respectfully.
Sure.
Having been one of the saber rattlers. Going back to a series of meetings that I was fortunate enough to participate at your council, and we needed to be held accountable for the errors that we did make last year. I have no bones about that at all. We were also then told to make sure that what we presented in our budget was, to the best of our ability, a fair representation of what we thought we would spend next year. I think we did a very good job at that, my personal opinion. I understand the mayor reducing it. I've heard that explanation. Part of that is balancing a budget. I certainly understand that. What I have not been able to get my hands around, and I'm certainly hoping you can shed some light on it for me, is the reduction from the mayor's transportation budget to what the 11 of you on the municipal council I believe it was an 11-0 vote passed. And I guess I'm looking for some explanation as to, did we not provide information? Did you not think that we would be, because basically it was reducing the number down to what we spent during the last school year.
Well, I just want to
And
clarify
I-
one thing that was.
No,
it
excuse
had-
me,
but-
I
but it's
wanna
not that
finish.
It was what was given to us. It was less than what was spent, which is frankly worse. I just want to clarify that point.
It was within a row of apple trees between what we were basically spending and the number that came down from the mayor's office. So, quite honestly, after being told to make sure that we said the proper budget, and after being chastised appropriately by some of your fellow members, I was a bit taken aback, I'm gonna be honest, with the reduction that the 11 of you voted. And I guess I'm looking, I realize that was done behind closed doors. I mean, I've looked for the minutes, and I know they don't exist. It's an executive meeting. But I'm hopeful that there's something that you can shed some light on as to, by reducing that budget by the amount that you did, what exactly you thought was going to happen.
Okay. Yeah, first off,
I'm working, I really want to ask this question respectfully, because it might not be coming off that way, but I do respect the fact that you're making yourself available and sitting there and taking this question, but
You did ask-
I
you
can't
did ask
help
it.
but, it's driving me crazy not to ask the question, so.
You did ask it?
That's disrespectful.
I know.
There are a lot of elected officials who would have a lot to learn. I think.
right, it was asked in a respectful manner, Bill, so don't worry about that. Just a couple of things. One, that was not done in executive session. It was actually done during a finance committee, a budget committee. The budget committee used to be known as the finance committee, then it was split a few years ago and became the budget committee, so, and we split some of the responsibilities. So when I was doing it, I was the finance chair, so I sometimes go back and use the term finance instead of budget. But that was actually held during a budget committee. The minutes of that should be available. It wouldn't be something that, the only minutes that we approve similar to yours are the actual meetings of the full regular meeting. But each of the chairs of the committee are responsible for taking notes on the meeting and then, making them available. Again, on the committee meeting, in terms of how definitive they are along that line in terms of the rationale, I'm not sure if that's really in it. I can tell you, I was at that meeting. It was not everybody was at that meeting, but most of the councilors were there. I'm trying to remember, I think there were 7 or 8 of us that were there on that particular night when the budget committee was finalizing the budget and also doing in terms of their cuts, but also doing the actual budget message. I can tell you that it was a interesting discussion back and forth. It was not unanimous, and I want to qualify that when we get to the vote part. I can tell you that I had suggested, knowing the figure that had come down, and knowing that there was a $300,000, roughly deduction from what had been asked. I was concerned about that because we had just gone through, as you had mentioned, as we all know, what happened? How come we got to this area? So I knew that, to me, I personally, sitting there, and again, I'm not running these meetings, at that point, I'm just one of the members of just one of the people attending the meeting. I personally appreciated the fact I thought that the amount that had been presented was accurate. I appreciated that. It was cut. That's something that the mayor would have to explain, obviously. But to me, I figure he had a reason for that. When we were working on the budget message, which we were doing kind of simultaneously the cuts in the budget message, I actually was sitting there doing a lot of, because of my keyboarding skills, it's very difficult for a person to run the meeting and somebody else to type it. So the last couple of years, I many times was sitting there doing the typing of it and the wordsmithing as we're going along. I personally had suggested that we put in language that we recognize the $300,000 cut, because I did not want to I want to get on the record then that we're recognizing that what the school committee asked for and what was being presented to us, there was already a difference. And that if there was a problem next year, I want to make it very clear that, as opposed to this year, we knew that there was a problem right up front. That did not get in. I would say that a lot of the counselors were frustrated during the past year with a lot of the other things that went on. And the only thing that I attributed to as I sat there watching the meeting, and again, it wasn't everybody on the same page. I mean, I'll explain when I get to the vote. There was some give and take in terms of how it should go and which step should be taken. I would say that overall, I attribute it personally, as I sat there listening to it, as frustration, over a lot of things that had gone in the past. And I think that there was a sense that, if it's cut out completely, then we're going to all have to work with this all the way along every step of the way going forward. Which, as I sat there sitting, I'm thinking to myself, that's going to result in a lot of meetings, extra meetings and a lot of extra work. But, again, now as far as the actual, vote, I can tell you that when it comes to the budget and the budget message, it's two separate votes on each of them. And one of the things that that I had said, and I had said this in the past, was, when you look at the budget and you look at the budget message, and I had made the observation that even when I had chaired the then Finance Committee for 4 years, and on the time that I've been on the council, there's never been any budget, although I voted for all the budgets on the time that I've been on, I have never been in 100% agreement with everything in the budget, with everything in the budget message. Okay? And I know historically there have been some councilors who, if they don't like certain things, then they'll vote no. But I have become concerned in more recent years, and I shared this with the council, that if we start voting no on a budget because there's some part that you don't like, some part that you don't like, sometimes you don't like, we get to the point that we might not even end up passing a budget. So my thought, my thought was, look, going forward, is this a budget that you can live with? Is it something that we can work with? Recognizing the fact that on July 1st, when the fiscal year begins, we do not have, millions of dollars sitting around waiting to be dispersed. We don't even have the revenue yet. So it's kind of a best faith, best guess estimate in terms of revenue and expenditures. And my message was, if you feel that overall, you can live with this collectively as a document, then I would encourage you to vote in the affirmative. So that's kind of where it came down in terms of a unanimous vote. It did not mean necessarily, just from some of the discussions, that every member of the council was in 100% agreement with everything in the budget and everything in the budget message.
Follow?
Sure.
I guess, yeah. I mean, and it is time to get, it's time to get over it and get beyond it, and I promise
That's
I
fine.
will. I just, my concern was during the budget process and during the budget, the meetings ahead of time, it was, okay, look, there's been problems, you guys got to get these problems fixed, and make sure you send a number that represents
Right,
what you're going to do, and then same body then turns around
right.
and slashes hundreds of thousands of dollars out of it. Leaves me a little confused at times, so.
No, and I understand that. And I can tell you that, that there were some counselors who felt that given what had gone on in the past
Mhm.
and the information that was being presented, speaking for myself, I'm not putting other counselors on the spot, but speaking for myself, I thought that the key issues had been addressed, at that point, and that between the school committee and the administration, that, that a lot of the issues that had caused problems in the past have been addressed. And that therefore, I was of the mindset personally, for me to give my opinion on the floor on something, I have to give up the chair. And sometimes I will do that and sometimes I don't. But even though I don't say anything and I still have to cast my vote, it doesn't mean that, I'm in agreement or disagreement with what's going down. But I can tell you that from my own personal point of view, I felt that what had come down originally and what was presented to us, I personally could live with, because I felt that the issues had been addressed. I was willing to take people at their word that they had addressed the problem. It may not be a complete 100% perfect patch over it, but it was something that was a good work, a good effort, and a work that going forward we would be able to work on and adjust accordingly. And I felt that that type of effort by the school committee, my own personal thought process between the administration and the school committee, was something that should have been rewarded. And my personal thought was that by supporting that effort and voting accordingly, that was the best thing to do. It wasn't obviously universal.
Well, thank you. I look forward.
That's the basic background of it.
Again, I appreciate you sitting there and taking my question, and I look,
I mean, I knew
very
that-
much look forward to
I
working
knew
with you
that-
and going forward and coming up to some answer
Right.
with where we're gonna be from here after.
Right. I mean, I
So-
knew there was frustration. I mean, I saw them in the, part of the meeting that night,
Mm.
and comments, and quite frankly, I think I had said to Mr. Murphy later, it didn't bother me. I felt, to a certain extent, I knew it was coming. It's just a matter of when it was going to come out. And as I said, I mean, at that point, one of the things that, on a personal note, that kind of bothered me, by all of it was like, one of the goals that I set for this term was I wanted to work to better relationships between the council and the school committee. And I thought, are we taking a step back at this point?
To be very clear, I think the answer to that is no.
Yeah.
Okay, I
I
mean,
mean, it's something that was the thought that went through my head.
if that's the closest Mr. Larson can be to being disrespectful, then I don't think we have a lot to worry about, frankly.
But I can tell you, in all seriousness, I have no hard feelings against any member of the administration or the school committee, or comments that were made at all. As I said, my goal is, and I've always believed, if you get people to, work together, solve problems, we're better off. And I think that's what the taxpayers expect of us when they elected us. They expect us to work together. They don't expect us to always agree, but I think they do expect us to be able to disagree without being personally disagreeable, and to try to work to resolve. Well, obviously, you look at the, 11 members of the council, 9 members on the school committee, 20 people. Are you going to get 20 people to agree on everything? I don't think we'd all agree on, what to have if we went out for pizza afterwards. So, you start talking about things like this and some things that, you work and it's near and dear to you, and then you see the way it's played out. Yeah, it can become very frustrating, and it's one of the things that I've learned in my time in city government. So it doesn't bother me at all.
Thank you.
But I appreciate your candor and your honesty.
Yeah, and Mr. Withers and Mr. Storrs both have questions that I want to get to, but I think, and I apologize for interrupting Mr. Larson, but I think that we are very much, as a general matter, on the same page in terms of where we need to go from here. My concern is over the sort of clarity of how we got here, and to some degree, I think it's going to be a little futile to try to explain the entire chronology of this, because we've got a lot of different numbers that are moving around. But the really short version is, the school committee requested 3.8, the mayor recommended about 3.4, 3.5, which was very close to the number that the school department ultimately spent in FY14. The council's reduction brought the number down to what was originally appropriated at the beginning of FY14, which represents a $400,000 difference from the mayor, both the mayor's approximately a $400,000 difference between the mayor's recommendation and what was ultimately spent in the year that we were criticized for spending more than was appropriated, which is because it's more than was officially requested. So there are essentially 4 numbers in play. The school committee's request is the highest. The council's appropriation is the lowest. The mayor's and the actual FY14 expenditure are the closest and are in the middle. Okay? Mr. Rose, Mr. Furtado, is that accurate? Okay. And again, I do think that's important to sort of understand that sequence. Mr. Withers, then Mr. Storrs.
Thank you. Thank you, President Cook, for coming. I know you were walking into a room where people are, not necessarily upset with you, but
I understand that.
Following up on what Mr. Larson said a lot about the budget situation, a lot of what concerned me was the tone of the budget message, and it was the scolding tone of the message that really kind of got under my skin a lot, and especially considering the fact that this was a new committee that had spent a large part of the beginning of its term cleaning up what prior mistakes that had been made, acknowledging those mistakes and saying these aren't going to fly anymore, and we're going to make sure it happens. And then to see prior actions held against us and to be chastised, I think, is what really got under a lot of our skin. So my question has always been why such the harsh tone towards this administration and this committee when we had been so open in trying to fix the problem and had been making strides to do that, I believe.
Yeah. Again, as I mentioned in response to Mr. Larson's question, I attribute it more just to frustration more than anything else. I mean, as one sitting there, as I said, I mean, I personally was was uncomfortable, as I sat there that night. I mean, that's why, in part of the budget message, I had suggested putting in the $300,000, difference, because I wanted that on the record. There just wasn't, a sense, of support for that. That's also why there was a line in the budget message that talked about the schools and the council getting together during the summer to resolve that. That was something that I actually introduced and suggested, because sitting there listening to this, I was kind of anticipating, as I sat there, how this was going to play out, and knowing what the school committee had done. As I said, I felt that good efforts needed to be rewarded, and I personally thought that, again, I know there's a certain amount of frustration, but as I sat there, I thought to myself, I was uncomfortable with the fact that we were not being, in my mind, supportive of efforts that had been made, to really address it. And the only thing I could come back to, as I sat there and as I thought about it later, it was all frustration, that was coming out over the fact that, there were, leading up to that, there had been a couple of times when we were asked to come up with additional monies, for transportation. And I think that at that point, it just wore down, some councils to that point. But I can tell you that it was not, there was a lot of debate and a lot of give and take on that particular night, but ultimately it is what it is.
Mrs. Stores?
Mr. Cook, first of all, thank you for your candor, and again, this question is being asked very respectfully. Would you categorize the general consensus of the council to be that the school committee needs to live within the transportation budget that was approved, which would likely require a significant reduction in services, or is it understood that more than likely this body will need to come before your council once again requesting additional funding so that we can continue providing the services that we have over the last year or past years?
Okay. When you're talking about the budget, are you talking the one that was approved by this body or the one ultimately approved by the council?
I'm talking about the transportation budget that was approved by the council.
Okay. The council, I think, historically expects department heads to live within, their approved budget, going forward. That being said, knowing that the amount of the action by the council to actually basically go back to level funding, as I mentioned in response to Mr. Larson's question, to me as I sat there that night, I thought to myself, if this really goes through, this is when it was being talked about, I thought, boy, if this really goes through, it's going to end up with a lot of extra meetings and a lot, with either joint meetings or whatever, just to be able to be dealing with this, and so from my point of view, yes, we expect departments to live within their budget, but I think in this particular, when I look at the transportation, given the fact of the action that was taken by the council, it seemed to me this was going to mean a lot of meetings in which we're going to be getting additional information, on an ongoing basis. Personally, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to, and part of the reason with the notebook that Mr. Furtado provided, giving us some guidance and some thoughts along that line, I'm hoping we're going to be able to resolve this. So we're not going to have a lot of these meetings, because at this time, as I said, I'm hoping that everybody's in a mood to start to work the problem. I mean, I personally don't want to be, from my own, this is not council point of view, this is one council's viewpoint. I don't want to be doing the job of your committee. If I want to be doing the job of this committee, I would have run for this committee, not for council. So again, I expect all departments when they come forth with their budget to be honest with us in terms of what they expect. And obviously, we sit there and critique it, and we make cuts as according to to where we feel it should be done. But ultimately, we expect people to live within their own budget. I think this one is going to be an exception in that, in order for that to happen, to me, just looking at the numbers, it's very obvious, and as it was that night that I sat there and said, we're going to be having meetings. We're going to be getting these figures, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to do it in a way that's not going to be anywhere as crazy as it was, and as frustrating as it was last year.
It's okay, and I know the term level funding was used, and I may be fighting a losing battle here, but I'm going to say
I know
that.
that.
Level funding would indicate it was funded at the level that we were spent at. This was funded at the level that it was initially appropriated at, which was about $500,000 short. So under most definitions of level funding, this wouldn't be level funding.
Okay.
But again, I will continue to beat that drum
Right.
to anyone who will listen.
And
recognizing that.
and I will say that even, even when there was the initial $300,000 difference, I made a mental note at that point that, if as things unfold, and there are certain things that are totally out of our control. I mean, there could be a number of homeless children who can move into this community, and if that was to happen, obviously, a lot of these, figures could be outdated pretty quickly, as things go by. I mean, but, from that point of view, I made a mental note to always keep in mind as we get into these discussions that if, if council start questioning up to that $300,000 mark, well, gee, what happened? I'm gonna be there to remind, hey, when we got this,
We'll
we
be there
knew
too,
there
don't
was a
worry.
$300,000 difference right away.
We'll be there.
And we cut it further.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's something that I had said to myself, I feel I may very well have to be
Right.
reminding everybody periodically about that.
Yep.
You know.
Ms. Singer.
I just have a comment more than a question, because Bill asked very respectfully the question that I had.
Word of the night.
But it is very concerning to me as a school committee member and a taxpayer in the city that counselors are making decisions based on frustration and not on a very realistic budget that was presented. And I really hope that going forward, like you said, we can work together to come up with a realistic number that will not cause more frustration in this school year by having to, again, have this body come before your body. And I just wanted to, that concerns me that decisions are made based purely on frustration.
Right. Again, if I could clarify, what I attributed to, was frustration, alone. And again, that was not a universal, that was my own take on it, and I'll stand corrected. I have not taken and asked every one of the councilors, why did you feel that way? I mean, I know that, that there were people who were looking at facts and figures that night too. It wasn't just, it's not like we had nothing in front of us. I mean, we were looking at the figures and there were different, as with a lot of things we do when we're at that point in the budget process, we are looking at the hard facts and figures. I personally attribute it, I think in some cases, to me, the overriding thing was frustration. And again, that's my own opinion. Maybe those who, on the council who felt it important to take the action that was necessary would disagree with me, and that's fine. That was my own view on it. I know that the facts and figures were there, and we were talking dollars and figures. I just attributed that as being, to me, that was the only rational decision that I could, a rational decision or not decision, but rational viewpoint that I could come up with, because personally, I personally disagree with that. And in trying to understand it, that's the only thing I could come back to, was over the past. But, so I don't think it's as widespread as I may have conveyed it to be, but that was only my take. And again, there was discussion of facts and figures there too.
Thank you.
Mrs. Storrs.
Mr. Cook, I think where I'm stuck is as it was indicated, we spent almost $3.5 million the previous year. That's true level funding, in my opinion. That's now I know that the numbers that were used, what was asked for at the beginning of the year, but we had to come to you throughout the year requesting more funding. So we know what the real value was that we used. What was approved, as we've just talked about, was $300,000, almost $400,000 less. So now we have a gap between what we were providing and how much it costs to provide that and what we're being given. Now, if we need to live within the transportation budget that's been approved, we have to make significant changes. We need to know, is that $300,000 to $400,000 something that we're going to be able to resolve? Or do we need to revamp everything starting at the beginning of the school year
Mr. Cook,
to close that hole?
Before you respond to that, I think I asked quickly for Mr. Sheehan or Mr. Furtado or someone from the school administration, because I suspect the answer is going to be that it's not doable. It's implausible. It's not accurate.
Without violating law, regulation, and school committee policy, point is, it's not doable. That budget was built on those particular things.
3 things we're not going to violate.
Right. And so, I mean, that's even worse than I was saying. I'm over here thinking, even if you cut every after-school program possible, which in my opinion would be devastating to the children, we're still not going to be able to close that gap. So,
Yeah, that's minimal dollars to begin with.
right. So I guess I'm sitting here, and I'm sure the other members are too, sitting here going, how can your council approve something that is so unrealistic that it's not possible to actually operate within it?
And again, I think, as I mentioned, I don't know if you looked at the material that Mr. Furtado had put together, but I think that going forward, I'm very optimistic that this is an issue that is going to come to a head and be resolved pretty quickly.
I appreciate that.
Okay. I mean, maybe that's wishful thinking on my behalf, but I think it's more than that. I feel very optimistic that this is something that we are going to be addressing and resolving pretty soon, because I don't think any of us, as individuals or as governing bodies, want to be sitting here, knowing that school's 2 weeks away from starting, that we're going to be, we're going to be fighting this battle for the next 9 months. I don't want to fight it for the next 9 months, and I think that with some of the focus and with some of the information that I've seen, and some stuff from Mr. Furtado, I feel very optimistic that this is an issue that we're going to confront and we're going to get a good handle on pretty quickly.
Thank you.
Right.
On that note, I feel as though we've covered this topic. I think one of the other things that we've seen is that sometimes when two bodies have significant levels of responsibility, like the municipal council and the school committee, it is good for the two bodies to work together and on occasion spend some time together. And so Mr. Cook and I tonight will be announcing that we will be inviting the members of the governing body of the Attleboro school system and the legislative body of the city of Attleboro to participate in a joint meeting of the two governing bodies in October, where our school administrators will be making and our educators and I hope some student representatives as well will be making presentations and leading us in a discussion on technology in the Attleboro schools. It's an issue that has been talked about often in the City Council chamber, often in this room. It's one that's having an impact on every classroom in every building in the Attleboro school system. And President Cook and I felt as though it would warrant a unique forum like a joint meeting between the City Council and the school committee to discuss these issues and to help articulate and illustrate for the community what it is that our educators mean when they talk about moving into the 21st century and expanding our utilization of technology in the school system. So I think we've scheduled it for October 30th. We've invited Mayor Dumas to participate as well to talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that have already been undertaken between the city and the school system and some of the planning that will be continuing, I believe, even tomorrow with an important meeting that's taking place between the two administrations. So, Mr. Cook, do you have anything to add on that? Or
The only thing I wanted to add was I actually do have the letter here that we have both Mr. Murphy and I have signed. A copy, I guess, will be distributed, if it hasn't been, to all members of the school committee, I guess, tonight. And then tomorrow night I plan to present this, make sure that all the city councilors have a copy. It's due, the meeting is scheduled for Thursday, October 30th, and it will be here at the library media center at the high school. And I did want to
it's a
thank...
good time to tell Mr. Rooney that we'll be using his library. Thankfully, he's here. So, by the way, get us some space, please.
Okay. Good, I'm glad to hear. Yeah, that was one of my concerns was, oops. This is something that, as I said, I'm looking forward to. I go back several years ago on the council. We actually had a similar meeting, or a couple of meetings actually, in that very room between the council and the school committee. In fact, it was involving school building and construction and so forth and so on. And we actually had the then head, the new head at that time of the school building administration, Kathleen Craven, who had come down and actually made a presentation. And I remember that meeting quite well. Members of the administration were there, both on the school side and on the city side. And I thought it was a good opportunity and another example of people being able to work together, for a common cause. And we all know about the increasing technology in our whole society and especially in our schools. And this is an issue that, again, that we're all going to be having to deal with in the very near future. and how do we best come to grips with it. So I think that this meeting, and I do want to thank, Mr. Murphy for his leadership in setting this up. He and I had spoken about this, in the past, and especially about a little bit more than a week and a half ago, about it, and for putting this, the letter together. And I'm looking forward to that particular meeting personally. And I already told our admin person to get it on the calendar so that we can avoid anything else being crowded in. Thursday nights tend to be one night of the week that tend to be open for most people, I'm finding.
Thankfully, we were able to fill it up with another meeting, so I'm sure everyone's grateful
it's
to us for that.
it's not that often. So I'm looking forward to that. And again, going forward, as I said, I'm very optimistic that a lot of the issues that we face as a community, I know in the last 2 years, as Principal Rooney so often comments about the Blue Pride, one of the things that, it was almost a year ago that, we broke ribbon on the new field over here. And in the months leading up to that, and even continuing, and I think you see now with the concession project, that there is a real renaissance going on in the city, a real can-do spirit. And I feel very thankful to be part of that. And when we were at the groundbreaking, I was remarking to one of the other officials that was there that projects like that took a long time to get to the stage that they're at now. And there were a few of us who got our share of bombs and arrows through down through the years. But we could see the vision, and we stuck with the vision. We made it become a reality. And be it the school busing, be it the technology, be it some of the other needs of a high school that needs to be renovation. I'm more convinced than ever that if you have a vision and you get people willing to work towards making that vision become a reality, it's amazing what can be accomplished. And I just look back in the last year with some of the things with that, with the track project, with a lot of these other things that we've been working on, planning, thinking, arguing about for a long time, finally becoming a reality. It's a very exciting position to be in. And again, there's nothing that we can't together, do. If we put our minds to it and we try to focus. Doesn't mean we're always going to be able to agree every step of the way, but I think if we're willing to work at it, we'll be set going forward. So again, I thank you.
That will certainly be the spirit that we'll have to embody as we move forward with some of these technology initiatives, because that is, in many ways, the next great challenge to this school system is moving forward in that regard.
Right, and that again was part of the driving force between Mr. Murphy and I, wanting to set up these meetings where we would share with each other what's going on and be able to exchange information and questions and deal with the issues rather than letting it be dealt with by other parties, or we would just go on wondering about what happened and why. So, again, if any of you have any questions anytime, feel free to call me. I appreciate Mr. Withers. He had called me following some of those meetings back in June to let me know what's going on. I sincerely, I thanked you at that time, and I appreciated, hearing where you were coming from on that. And again, going forward. So, I hope you all have the rest of the summer. That's only a few more weeks before things get really crazy again. I've always thought there should be like a transition. We go from these lazy, carefree days of summer, bang, right into everything. It just doesn't seem right. But before I leave on a personal note, I just want to also express my best wishes to Marissa McCarthy as moving on. I've enjoyed working with her down through the years. I thought that the information she's been providing, to the council, to me personally, whenever I felt that we needed some additional information, was very timely, very helpful, and it's frustrating at times to see something like that go, but it's good to know that we help to develop somebody who can go on and further their career and help other communities to achieve the levels that we're achieving here. So I do, on a personal note, I just wanted to wish her the best as she moves on. So
thank you.
So again, thank you so
We
much,
appreciate that
and
very much.
enjoy the rest of your meeting.
See you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Cook, if you could just leave the orange folder with somebody who can copy it, I'll make sure we get you a copy. Okay, thank you, because wouldn't want to lose our invitation there. Okay, so Mr. Cook mentioned that this would be the joint meeting between the school committee and the city council will take place on October 30th. And at the beginning of his presentation, we discussed very briefly the Big Read and the campaign that is being undertaken by the folks at the Attleboro Public Library. The book this year chosen for the book read is when the emperor was divine. I was told by the facilitators of that program that we will be receiving our copies of that book. The municipal council were presented with theirs in July, and prior to the joint meeting and that school committee spotlight meeting, we will be having a special meeting of the school committee. I believe the date is going to be October 2nd, and some representatives from the Big Read will be coming in, along with some representatives from our school system to participate in a discussion on the book and to talk a little bit about why the book was chosen and why this is an important program that the community is undertaking. I'll have some more information for the committee on that in the coming days. I believe we're in the process of identifying some students who will actually be helping us to participate in that discussion, which I think we all look forward to. And again, as I said, there'll be more information on that forthcoming. Okay, our next up is the appointment of our new leader of the Peter Thatcher Elementary School, and I would ask Ms. Learned to come forward and join the committee, and Mr. Sheen, if you could introduce us to Principal
Sure.
Leonard.
Please have a seat. Joan, would you like to join us? I asked Joan DeAngelis to also join us because throughout the course of the year, it's, in a large system and getting to know the culture of the system and so forth, and Joan's expertise in the field of elementary school education as well as other areas. Joan will be serving as Veronica's mentor throughout the course of this year at that level. So, and she also participated in the entire screening and selection process. So, it is an honor to present to this committee and to the community as a whole the new principal at Peter Thatcher Elementary School, Mrs. Veronica Learned. I marvel at the last name, quite honestly, in that profession. Currently, Veronica resides in Waltham, Massachusetts. She is certified in the areas of early childhood, K through 3, elementary teaching certificate in grades 1 through 6. She is also certified to be a middle school principal and assistant principal and an elementary school principal and assistant principal. She has a bachelor's degree from the University of Vermont in elementary education and psychology, but she also has 2 master's degrees. One master's degree in science of education from the University of New England in Maine, and the second master's degree in educational leadership in Kennesaw State University in Georgia. Beyond that, Veronica's been an assistant principal over the past 3 years, honing her skills. But she's played other roles that were very intriguing to us in the screening and interview committee, and those were that she, in fact, was an instructional coach and a lead teacher in schools. She was the director of Title I, which will pay major dividends, especially as the principal at Thatcher Elementary School. She also was a Title I literacy coach and reading specialist, and she spent 8 years as a teacher at the elementary level, honing her skills in the classroom and then moving on to becoming an administrator. Through her education, she personifies the point of lifelong learner, and I believe that she has the commitment level that this committee is looking for a person that's going to commit to the Attleboro Public Schools, commit to our kids, commit to this community and to the parents, and she's going to be a valuable asset all the way around. So I introduce her to you at this particular time, and you can ask her any questions you want.
Thank you, Mr. Sheen. Welcome, Ms. Leonard, and welcome to the Attleboro school system. I believe you started at Thatcher on August 5th. Is that correct?
August 4th.
August 4th. Okay. So, would you like to share your initial impressions with the committee?
Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone. It is truly an honor to be here and have this opportunity to lead the learning at Thatcher Elementary School. I'm just so thrilled, and I am looking forward to getting to know all of the staff. I have met some, but not all of them, and as well as the students and their families. So I'm just right now delving into things a little bit at a time every day, and that will be my goal, is to learn everything I can about the community and the students and the staff, and to continue the learning there.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, and
Thank you.
congratulations. Any questions or? I would just say that we try not to play favorites amongst buildings, and as a general rule, we don't. But the Thatcher Elementary School.
Watch out.
I've seen the people.
You got two others in the back.
But I would say Thatcher, because it is essentially two schools in one building, there is something particularly unique about that. Mr. Rooney would probably say that the high school has 6 schools in one building. But,
we're the favorite high school.
Right, yeah, they are the number 1 high school, no question about that. But given the number of programs that are housed at Thatcher, with the Early Learning Center there, frankly, with the building's history and how it's served, essentially, it's been a junior high school, a middle school, and elementary school, and the fact that it's as old as it is and looks as good as it does.
It's beautiful.
It really is an exceptional place, and I think that the families there have really sort of woven together a very strong culture, and I think you'll certainly benefit from that, and they'll benefit from your leadership as well. So.
Thank you. I have seen that already. The school is absolutely beautiful. Other people would be jealous to see it.
Sure.
From other districts that I've been in, and it just shows how much the community does feel proud of that school.
Good. Well, again, welcome, congratulations.
Thank
and,
you.
The next time you come to a school committee meeting, we'll be a little briefer. Okay.
No worries.
But congratulations.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms.
Welcome.
DeAngelis.
Nice to meet you.
All right. We are sort of hopscotching around our agenda tonight, so we'll try to run through our consent agenda. Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $1,000 from the Pub 99 restaurant to Hyman Fine Elementary School for deposit in the gifts donations line.
So moved.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. A motion to accept a donation in the amount of $1,615.05 to from Ahold Financial to Attleboro High School gifts donation line.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. A motion to accept a donation in the amount of $2,014 from the class of 2014 to Attleboro High School gifts donation line.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And a motion to declare the following non-serviceable copy machines as surplus. 1 Canon IR 7015, 1 Canon NP 6080, 1 Ricoh 2090, AFI CIO. That's it.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. That takes care of our consent agenda. And now, if Mr. Furtado and Mr. Rose could join the committee, we're going to have a discussion about the closing down of fiscal year 14. What a year it was. I believe we are still generally in the process of finishing up some of the work that needs to be done. There will be some more information coming to the committee in the coming weeks. But I know that there are at least a few outstanding items that need to be cleared up prior to putting 2014 in the rear view, the fiscal year 2014 in the rear view mirror. So, Mr. Furtado, if you want to share those with the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the committee may be aware, annually there are items that come requested to be paid from prior year, in this case FY14, that we receive notice of after the close of the year. The city is very generous in letting us have some leeway at the end of the year to process all of the necessary paperwork and invoices. But there's always something or some things that slip through the cracks, and we just can't get it processed in time for year end, whether the vendor doesn't send the invoices out in time, whether our people neglected to process payroll paperwork. There's always something. No system is perfect. So I provided you with the detail behind about $9,800 worth of expenses and invoices from FY14 that we will be required to go before municipal council and request permission to pay for from prior year funds. We're sitting here now on August 18th. We would expect to go before council in the September meeting, and it's entirely possible that an invoice or two could kind of creep in, through the door between now and then. But what we would ask is that the committee provide us with permission to go to municipal council with all outstanding invoices and balances to request permission to pay from prior year funds.
Any reason to think that the number will be significantly higher?
No.
Even I know you said that there may be some that come in at the last minute, but we're still talking about the same
Same general neighborhood, yeah.
I'll make a motion, if you want. I'll make a motion that the school committee grant permission to bring all outstanding prior year obligations to the city council for their meeting in September with the understanding that there could be additional invoices received between now and then.
Thank you.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes.
And as we continue to do this kind of process, cleaning up the end of the year, we would expect to bring to finance in September a kind of an estimate as to where we stand at year end. And that number would later be certified by the city sometime in the late fall, early winter.
And you're talking about carryover funds
Yeah.
at this point. And I did say to the administration earlier that I know that the work is ongoing. The final numbers haven't been identified. I don't think it would be wise, frankly, to be speculating about where we stand. That we'll get to that point, obviously, in the very near future. Is it fair to say, Mr. Furtado, that we're confident that we finished the year on the
We have a
right side
surplus.
of the?
We don't have a decimal point yet, so but until we get that, we'll refrain from any public pronouncements.
Understood.
Not
Okay.
in the red.
Any questions, comments from the committee? Okay, thank you, Mr. Furtado, Mr. Rose. If you could remain with the committee for the time being, we're gonna move on now to essentially items 5, 6, and 7 that we'll be condensing. Frankly, they're all related. All this has to do with the opening of school on September 2nd for our staff and September 3rd for our students. There are a number of items that the administration will be discussing and presenting with us. And I'm not sure where, Mr. Cheney, you'd like to begin, but I know we're going to be covering some personnel issues, some of which, frankly, will pick up where we left off in June when we were experiencing our what I think could be accurately described as a budget crunch, not a budget
I
crisis.
think what we'll do is show where we currently are as of Friday with our numbers and then as a general overview about what the enrollment is.
Sure.
Because then that lends itself to the personnel matters as well.
Sure.
And where we are with those.
Yep,
So-
they're very much interrelated. I should add, as I think I informed the committee, I did ask the administration to look specifically at
Yes.
where we are with regard to our enrollment numbers, where those projections are. And frankly, part of that conversation, which I think has been overdue for some time, and I would expect to continue throughout the course of this year, which is where are we with regard to the enrollment of students, children and young adults who live in Attleboro but are choosing to enroll elsewhere besides the Attleboro Public Schools, which is frankly a conversation that we need to start to have. So we're gonna start now. So Mr. Sawyer's got the remote.
You have hard copies in front of you, I believe. So this is, the reality is that as of Friday, August 15th, you have in front of you what are the numbers, what it looks like right now at all of our schools in the 9 different schools, and including the 9 major schools, but then also the Early Learning Center, et cetera. The reality is, and the good news, depending on your perspective, is that there isn't a great amount of difference between where we left off and where we're going to begin this school year. There isn't a great decline of students within the Attleboro Public Schools. And those are numbers. Now, that's the total number, because I believe we left too short of 6,000 students in the school district last year. But when you look at pre-K and grades 1 to 12 at your 9 different schools, including, and then in addition, the Learning Center, et cetera, you then get a feel that those are a lot of students, 6,000 students. So if there's a difference of 100 and 150 kids, that's not a lot of students spread across all of those grade levels. Okay? Next. What's more interesting is, as of last Friday, there were 90 new students registered within our school district, and we have approximately 2 weeks to go prior to that. So we have 90 right now registering, and those are the grade levels that they've registered into. So once again, That may have impact on personnel matters pending on contract language and class size, et cetera. But we feel pretty comfortable right now that those numbers may increase, but what you don't have control of is the first day of school and that child does not show up to school. So we don't know what children leave the school district for the most part. Some of them will withdraw from school in the middle of the summer or at the end of the school year, but oftentimes you just don't see Johnny sitting there and saying, where did he go? And then the school system that he's going to will ask for the records to be sent to that school system. So we don't have those things to project those 100% accurate numbers.
This might be a particularly ignorant question, but how is the number calculated? How is the number calculated with regard to kindergarten students? Because they're mostly new, I assume, because it's kindergarten, and yet we have only 3 of them coming in at Thatcher, which doesn't sound right. So
just new registrations.
new registrations as of
Last week we started open registration.
Okay.
So we opened the doors Tuesday night.
Yep.
We had 52 new students walk in the door to register. So that only represents 3 students that registered for Thatcher K. We did K registration back in March.
Okay, and so I'm sorry.
this
So
is
that's the
anybody
that
new
was the
coming
that's
in
the
this summer.
the answer I was looking for. That we had the registration in the spring.
Yes.
And this is just capturing students that have come in since school closed, essentially.
That's accurate.
That's last week.
Just in the last week.
That's last week because we had we had 3 open registrations last week. We have 3 this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Do we know what our total kindergarten registration is now, or approximate? Which again, I understand it will and does fluctuate.
I don't have that number at the top of my
Okay.
head. I know that we had the early registration that we did, and we did a great job in that and got as many kids as possible, as evidence as you only have 22 new registrations coming into the beginning of the school year.
Yep. Ms. Withers.
This is right here as of August 15th, 417 students kindergarten full day.
417?
417.
Okay. So my real question is, do we know where 417 fits in with regard from years past at this time? It doesn't. I don't need this answer immediately. I'm just curious. I think
Low.
Is it low?
We cut 2 kindergarten classrooms in June because we had 3 empty kindergarten classrooms district-wide based on enrollment. Now, as you see there, we
They're filling back up.
suspected that it would creep up, but it is low.
And is it low as compared to how we generally start the year, or low as compared to where we are on August 18th?
Low where we are now. Well, low. It's been low in comparison to the other 2 years I've been involved. It's been low at every stage of the game.
Any factors that are?
Well, when we compare our numbers to 2 years ago, we used to have a lottery, which really drove people to register their kids early so that they were eligible for the lottery. Last year, we had our first experience where without that in place,
An incentive wasn't there?
there was no incentive, so lots of people didn't register until much later, which obviously is a problem for us. This year, we took a lot of steps to try to take that on, including, we added a whole new event at the end of June to invite the people in who had registered. And we figured if they heard that if you registered, you got to go to this event at your school, that would get you in the door. And I think that actually did help, but still the numbers are low.
Okay. Mr. Larson?
Just prior to being on the school committee, I was involved with another organization that ran a preschool, and I remember back then they were making the comment that the census data supported a reduced birth rate over, I'm going to say, the last 5 to 10 years. So we could be seeing the reflection of part of that, if that trend is still continuing now.
It reminds me that another thing that we did for the first time ever, well, not ever, in a long time, was we asked the city for census data and mailed home to the people who live in town who we knew had kids of kindergarten age.
But these numbers are more just in generality and the
right. But like when we took real steps to try to reach out to people.
Sure. Mrs. Storrs?
Over the years, like going from kindergarten to first, second, the changes aren't really that significant, right? So by looking at the other numbers, we can see, 455, 480, 471 for first, second, and third district-wide. It looks to be about down 40 to 50 students for whatever reason.
Okay. Thank you.
So the question was asked, how many of our students choose to go to school someplace else? There's a report as of January 1st each year that answers that very question. When you add up all the kids, this year we had 7,044 students in the city of Attleboro. 5,944 of them were Attleboro public school students. They were part of our total enrollment. And then the remainder went to the various other places that are listed here. I included on this chart the 10 greatest numbers, so where the enrollment was the 10 highest. And then, well, I should say the 9 highest, and then the 10th one is all the rest were lumped together in other private schools, which was 92 students. So my point is the next person on the list was less than 27 students.
Sure. I think this is a chart that I'll want to come back to at some point, but we can move on for the time being. Mr. Withers.
And maybe when I ask the question, you'll want him to stop. But the question I have, and I know there's been questions about what this costs us, but what I'm wondering is how this compares to other communities. I mean, this is about 20% of the kids are going to other schools. Is that high? Is it low?
My calculation was 15%.
15, okay.
So, and of that, I don't know. I think that's something we really need to look at is what is a comparable number. I really can't tell you whether that's high or low. So I think that's the next phase of this investigation.
Yeah, and that's why I said I think this is a chart that I'd like to come back to tonight, but we're also going to be coming back to this, I think, periodically throughout the year.
While I think we should be concerned about all 15%, we're particularly sensitive to the 6% who we're paying to go to the other place that they're going.
Yeah, as we should be.
So that's
there's one column up there, or row, that is sticking out like a sore thumb. I mean, that's a problem.
Yeah, so Foxborough Charter School, Tri-County, and Bristol County. Those students are students who we. I should note that our out-of-district students, those are in the total Attleboro Public Schools number because we consider those our kids.
Sure.
And I did have a question regarding that. It's listed as 49. And that to me, I'm not like alarmist mode or anything, but that's higher than what it has been in the past. I thought we were at the 30s for a while. And do we know why that is?
Sure, that number reflects the Journey Home as well that's in town. And so there's students that we're programmatically responsible for, but not fiscally. Many community homes, such as Journey Home, have closed. So Attleboro is housing almost all students that need that type of placement here. So our numbers have grown upwards to 10, 8 to 10 for just students that are located there.
Okay, thank you.
And then when along that line, I look at it in comparison to other districts and other places that I've been, to have 49 students of out-of-district placement of a population of over 1,000 children with special needs in the district. Wow, I think that's incredible that we've been able to house and create programs within the Attleboro Public Schools for all those kids. That's not to say that you don't work to build programs to bring back more and more and more, but I think that's a very low number, as well as I think it's a credit to the Attleboro Public Schools to look at the number of 75 of homeschool children for whatever those reasons are. 75 is, I believe, in comparison to other communities, I think percentage-wise, that's a very, very low percentage.
Yeah, I suspect it is as well. I thought that stood out as a potentially very impressive number, but I think it's another one that, as we sort of expand this chart out, those are the numbers that we're going to want to look at to do comparisons, to make comparisons both to other districts and of comparable size and trends with regard to whether or not these numbers are going in the direction that we want them to. And at any point we identify numbers that aren't, we need to develop strategies to reverse their directions. So again, we'll come back to this chart. Unless that was the last thing, in which case we'll come back to it now.
In terms of enrollment, yes.
Yeah.
All right then. Well, I guess I have two questions, I think. Again, I said one line. Really, I guess there are three lines that stand out in a particularly profound way, I think. And that's the two career and technical schools, Tri-County and Bristol Aggie, and charter school in Foxborough. With the technical schools, it seems to me that some percentage of those students, perhaps all of them, and please share what the accurate information is there, that those are in some cases programs that we are yet to develop. And so if families have, if students have decided that's the career path, then, I mean, we understand what needs to be done to sort of put ourselves in competition for those students. But that's, there are steps that need to be taken in order to do that. With regard to the Foxborough School, and we've talked about this before in this room, there is no criticism that would, or should be directed at any family for the decision that they make in terms of where they enroll their students. That is not what we're talking about here. But I think what we do need to talk about is what strategy are we as a district employing to ensure that we are competing for the enrollment of students who are growing up in Attleboro. And I think that was at the heart of sort of the question I asked, and one that I think we need to sort of really, as a committee and as an administration, explore in the coming months. And so I guess I would invite any of the administrators to comment on that, both in terms of what does it mean from sort of an educational and community standpoint to have over 300 students making the trip to Foxborough every day, and as I think was alluded to earlier, what does it mean from a budgetary standpoint? Because the state is looking at this in a particular way, and I don't know if they're trying to create incentives for us to compete aggressively for these students, but it seems to me they have, so we should start recognizing that. But does anyone want it? Mr.
Yeah,
Sheen?
I think that, let me go with the first statements that you made with regard to Tri-County and Bristol Aggie. The bottom line is that 99% of the children who go there is because we don't have the program here, and they want to go into that program in those schools. At the same time, we know what we're looking to do, and we've had discussions from this board and other boards and committees about how are we going to develop our CTE program, and what are we going to do to potentially impact those kids that they can stay within the community and be educated here. At the same time, it's a numbers game as well. Sometimes, for example, the expense to create a cosmetology program within the district that would affect maybe 5, 6, 7 kids. In fact, that's not cost effective. So therefore, you tuition those kids out to a Tri-County or whatever the case may be, because you just can't do it. And those are some of the programs that, in fact, that's taking place. It's very interesting, especially in the last 5 years with the onslaught of charter schools, as to what, in fact, is the draw. And a lot of times the draw, and I have to speak not so much from the Massachusetts point of view, but from a district or a system that I had been familiar with. And that was that a lot of times that they offer programs and they have things going on in their schools that, in fact, reach the need of a certain population of students or their families. And so consequently, we do know that the state and federal government is, in fact, funding the charter schools and advocating for charter schools and mayoral academies, etc., even more so than maybe the public sector. So, there is a draw there. I think for us, it's about looking at what is that particular draw, what are some of the things that they're doing there that is the draw for those kids, and at what grade level, but even more so, how many of those kids come back? Mm-hmm. After a certain time, how many of those kids come back? Yeah. So I think evaluating why they go and then evaluating why some of them come back, I think is really key to where we want to go in our direction in the future.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's an examination that needs to take place. And I don't know if that starts with focus groups, surveys. I don't know. I think we need to look into exactly how, to what degree can we obtain specific information and essentially try to target some of these constituencies, because for a variety of reasons. I mean, one, if a family is choosing to raise their children in Attleboro, we want them to know that they have an excellent option in terms of enrolling their students in the Attleboro schools. I think that benefits the community and it benefits the school system. In a sort of short-term, from a short-term practical perspective, I think there, as we talked about earlier, there's some budgetary incentives here, correct? And I don't know, Mr. Furtado, if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I was specific to Foxborough, Attleboro, the municipality pays about just under $10,000 per student, and as you saw, there's over 300 students going. So your bill is about $3 million. That's offset a little bit by some state aid to the charter schools for capital, so that's netted out of that. So I think the actual bill to the city of Attleboro last year for 14 was something around $2.7 million. That is countable money that goes there rather than here. The committees in your debates about transportation is obviously very familiar with countable aid. So that's an expense, roughly $9,000 per student, that you are watching walk out the door. So I think that as Superintendent just pointed out, that kind of understanding the motivations to leave and understanding the motivations to come back are important to kind of minimize that migration. I don't think the kindergarten numbers are reflective of a market shift. I think it's more a demographic shift.
Okay. Mr. Storrs?
Looking at the Tri-County and the Bristol County, I know that we've increased our CTE program over the last few years. Have those numbers shifted down? Yeah, in correspondence with the fact that we've increased our programs.
I can't speak to the past, what took place prior. I know what the work that took place last year, and with Mr. Rooney and all of the people associated with the CTE program, being cognizant of the point that we want to build the very best CTE program because we have a segment of our population that truly benefits from that. And we really want to bring our kids back. So it's about developing those particular programs if, in fact, it's financially beneficial to us to develop that program here. And this was the whole thing about the task force with regard to the potential changing of the central administration to another facility so we can house greater programs and recognize the cost savings from bringing back those kids from Tri-County and potentially from Bristol Aggie as well.
And that was the second part of my question is, of the 91 students, would there be a way, it shouldn't be too difficult, maybe in the curriculum subcommittee we could discuss the breakdown of what those 91 students are taking to help us understand where our priorities should be so that we can
That's in a
keep
report.
those
We already know where they're going. We already know what we approve for them to go into those programs beforehand.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now, that doesn't
that's
change.
not
Is that a fair statement? Or once we approve it, they can't go there and all of a sudden change what they're teaching, right? And what they're learning, correct?
They can, I mean,
Taking them back.
So,
Well, that's what I'm saying. If they change what they are learning to something that we offer, they're coming
Yes,
right back here.
That's right.
Okay.
yes,
If we have room.
that is true.
Okay.
Right.
Other questions or comments from the committee? So we've got other issues related to the opening of school that we need to move on to. And I sort of wanted this as just sort of a starting point, but I think that, even tonight, there were some issues that had to be discussed. There was some discourse that had to play out with our friend from
Mr. Cook.
Mr. Cook, exactly. There's a UK expression of the other place. I didn't know if that would be appropriate or not, but maybe another time. So I think that's important. We've got to get to that stuff. But I think part of why it's so important to get some of these issues resolved is that the school committee cannot be spending hours on end talking about transportation. The kids have to get there safely. They have to get there efficiently. They've got to be there on time, and we've got to do it in a fiscally responsible manner. So that has to happen, and we need to move on and figure out why, 2 weeks from now, hundreds of children in Attleboro are going to go to school in Foxborough and all these other places. So, again, we'll come back to that. I think ideally what I would anticipate the committee asking from the administration is for this chart to essentially be expanded so we can get a sense as to how this January 1st, 2014 snapshot compares to January 1st of previous years. And then I think as we were talking about the various grade levels, to get a sense as to what the trends are with that with respect to that. And then we need to really start brainstorming about what types of strategies we're going to employ to go out and get the information that we need so we can make determinations as to whether or not these numbers are reasonable. And there's a city of 43,000 people with 6,000 students. You're going to have about 1,000 go elsewhere. I don't believe that, frankly. I'm not the one doing, the on-the-ground research, so I can reveal my bias to begin with. I don't buy it. I don't think that many students should be going elsewhere, and I think, frankly, we've just got to do a better job at that. But I think that's an important discussion to have, and I think there'll be time to have that. Moving on to the other aspects of the opening of school, I know we've got some facilities discussion to be had, and I know we've got some personnel issues, so I'll defer to the administration as to who wants to.
The facilities piece is just an overview for the committee's sake.
Okay.
As the committee may be aware, you'll be getting a much more detailed report in September once school starts, has budgetary issues and vendors and that sort of thing. But this is just to let you know that we're on all of these projects. The facilities director estimates that we're about 90% complete as of today. So we're very close to being completely ready for the opening of school. The tasks are pretty extensive, and I just wanted to have the committee have a sense of comfort that we will certainly be ready to open the doors when the students show up.
And for people watching home, I think that's what they're most concerned about, is that we will be ready on September 3rd. And as the committee knows, there will be the first meeting of the subcommittee on infrastructure and facilities tomorrow evening in this room. So I think that's the first inaugural subcommittee meeting in some time in Attleboro. So that should be good. Mr. Sir, did you want to do the personnel report, and we can? Sure. Feel free to touch upon the other personnel issues that we are.
Did you want to?
Whatever you got.
All right. Well, first I'd like to say that I talked to Chairman Murphy about the idea of changing a little bit about how we approach the personnel report moving forward. I know it's everybody's favorite part of the meeting when I read everybody's names, but I'm not sure that that's 100% necessary. So while we will...
The ratings go up. When
I know. It's a fan favorite at home, I know.
That it is.
We will still produce the report, and I will come prepared to answer questions about it at each meeting. But I don't think there's any need to continue to read that. So you have tonight's report, which is extensive, because this is a very, very busy time of year in our HR department. One of the things that I was asked to update you on, in June, we made cuts to prepare for our budget situation, not quite knowing what the final number would be, and not knowing what all the savings would necessarily be. That led us to cut 12.7 FTEs in the teaching ranks and 5.8 FTEs in the para ranks. We have restored 5.2 FTEs worth of positions among the teachers, leaving us a current reduction of still 7.5 FTEs. And we have restored 0.7 FTEs among the paras, which leaves a current reduction of 5.1. So we still have significant reductions in our staffing for the upcoming school year. We believe that we will be able to start the school year with adequate staffing with these reductions, but I have to say that, as you saw, the kids streaming in, so we have grades and classes and schools that are certainly running up against what we see as acceptable numbers, and we will keep you posted as to how that plays out in the first week of school, because as Mr. Sheehan said, you don't necessarily overreact to the number on September 1st, because it's going to change again in the first 2 weeks of school.
Yeah, and I think this is a very important point, particularly because we're essentially picking up where the committee left off when we adjourned in June. That when we passed our final budget on June 25th or June 26th, I think it was the 25th, we were staring at numbers that are hardly ideal, and as we all know, there were difficult decisions that had to be made, and that while we've been able to offset some of those difficulties because we've had X number of resignations or X number of retirements. Two things should be very clear. We were short-staffed last year. We are even more short-staffed this year. We aren't where we want to be in terms of staffing numbers. And so if there's a sentiment in any place that, there was that budget crisis and there were no miracles reported other than perhaps the one minor one. How are they even able to open school? Well, we're able to open school because we have enough people to open school and not enough people to really do what we want to do. So that's something that an issue that we're going to have to chip away at over time. But I think it's important that we're clear that there were consequences to the state's decision to underfund education the way that they did, and that there are a lot of them. But one of them is that we're about 13 educators short of where we were last year, and last year we weren't where we want to be. So, is that a fair description of Mr. Chairman?
Along that vein of what this committee did last year, much to Mr. Sawyer's credit, last year, central office, in fact, registered all the students, grades 1 to 12. All the paperwork, everything was done here, not in the buildings. And carrying on that tradition in that direction this year, Joan DeAngelis carried that out as well. But with the help of the committee and recommendations for policy, you passed brand new policies for residency, et cetera, last year. And coming to this year, we have a real good feeling that we're registering students that in fact are Attleboro students, that the policies that you passed in fact stopped other people from registering their children in our schools. And so that's a huge benefit as far as losing that amount of teachers and paras and so forth, but also at the same time, what would our class sizes be if you didn't do that work last year, and if we didn't have those policies by which we could stop those people from doing this? And that all takes place at central office now. So there's a greater control. The flip side of that, it's a greater control with regard to transportation as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a huge benefit from us working with you and creating those policies. It's going to pay major dividends this year, but in years to come as well. So that was a good job.
Thank you. Mr. Sir?
The only other thing I would want to add on personnel is that all of the teachers who were laid off in June have been recalled and have been for several weeks at this point. And there is only one paraprofessional still in a laid-off status, waiting to be recalled.
Okay.
All the rest have been brought back. And I bring this up because the district goes to great lengths to hire good people, people who we are excited to have here and make a very positive contribution. And I'm glad that we've been able to find ways to bring these people back so that we can get them back to work.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. I just want to add, in case, occasionally with these meetings, the folks have a tendency to only see a snippet of it. And so while we have been able to recall those staff members, and we're grateful to have been able to do that, we are still dealing with a reduction in staff. This is we have significantly fewer people working in the Attleboro schools last year than we did this year. We still have what we need, but if we want to move forward, this is an issue that needs to be addressed over time. Any questions? Mrs. Scales?
Back in June, there was a restructuring in the elementary schedule. So I have all the specialists there's four at each of the schools. So
That's in place already?
That's all taken place already. And as far as the moves of the Insight from Willett to Thatcher and the Able from Brennan to Coelho, are all the staff in place for all those as we're going?
Yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. But they will be within the next 4 days. That's my anticipation.
So all staffing and everything will be taken?
Before the start of the school year?
Yes.
All the staff will be in place.
Okay.
That's a good point, sort of a new facet beyond the personnel issues, and Dr. McCarthy, feel free to comment on this, but there were 2 significant transitions that were undertaken this summer, with the Insights program moving from Willett to Thatcher and Able moving from Brennan to Coelho. I understand that it sounds like there's some staffing issues that are in the process of being resolved, but as a general matter, are we where we need to be in terms of those programs being ready to be up and running? And again, Dr. McCarthy, feel free to.
Sure. Yes, we're just looking for the one teacher for the Insights classroom at Thatcher School, and then some minor supplies and things of that order just coming into the classrooms. But the last missing piece really is just that one teaching position.
Okay.
Other than that, all the other needs are in place, and the kids will be ready to start the school year with all of their services and programs up and running as they were in the previous building.
Okay, thank you.
Including the 12-plus program
Yes.
at the high school,
Okay.
which is a new location as well.
Where was that?
The 12 Plus program was a new program that started last year,
Right.
and we used one of the old FICO rooms for
Right.
the classroom, and we're using the location where files were before.
The old cafeteria.
The
at the high
Zamboni
school.
room?
Yes. Everyone has a different name for it. It's been completely restructured, and the maintenance
So no
team
more
are doing-
Zambonis?
The Zambonis are in the front, the classroom is in the back.
Half of
It honestly is a very nice upgrade from where the classroom was, because there's open windows to the courtyard, which the special ed program's working on as a project, and it's looking lovely out there. There's a full kitchen being made, a full living area, so it really is a significant upgrade. I mean, it's not ideal, and it is an older building, and we're using our space wisely, but it's a huge
Well,
upgrade.
some
for the
places we are.
Yeah.
We're working on it, actually, actively. But Mrs. Gels?
I was just going to say, use the Zamboni for driver training.
Bumper cars or entertainment.
Okay. I have 2 other areas. An update on transportation, which is always our favorite part. And if there are any, I know there are some calendar details that are prepared to be announced. So if there are any other areas, but if you want to.
While we were talking, I thought to update you on one other thing. We're implementing this summer, the state's new national background check on all people being hired into the district. And the state has struggled with the implementation of this. There are not enough centers for people to go to get an appointment to do the background check. So we're finding this is delaying our hiring process, because we can't sign them until we see the report on, that they have a clean record. So that's been a new challenge this year that's slowing us down a bit.
But no reason to think that there'll be any impact on the first day of school.
Very hopeful not. But I don't control it.
Yep.
They send the report when they send it, and I can't act until they do.
Understood. All right, you want to go to the calendar?
Sure. I've brought for your review a newer version of the calendar you approved back on the 25th. As we discussed back when we talked about the calendar originally in March, we first set the calendar, and then the principals worked to put in some of the other dates that are part of the calendar every year. And so this new calendar that I've given tonight has those dates. I don't want to go through the whole thing, but a couple important notes. We've put in the early releases for both the parent conferences at elementary school, which you'll see here on November 5th, and also the high school exams, which you'll see in December, March, and June. So those are half days that we had talked about originally as part of the discussion, but had not been placed in the calendar yet. Also, we have again, the conference nights themselves, and in September, what we used to refer to as open houses, we're moving more towards a curriculum night model, and that's reflected in what we've called them. And then Blue Pride Night is on the calendar for November 20th, which is always an important event for the district.
Okay. Any questions on this, Mr. Storrs?
First, I want to just pass along that the feedback I've heard has been very positive about the new calendar, so thank you for your hard work on that. As far as June, I saw that you have that little indication that the last day of school is June 18th, but I think the way it's written here, with the 25th being the last, even though it's got that little, might be. Is there no way? I know that the state requires us to do effectively 2 calendars. What we are actually going to release on, and then what if we had 5 snow days release? Is there a way to add that in there, just so maybe head off some misunderstandings?
So we're supposed to create a calendar of 185 days, which this does. That's certainly part of it. But also, for many years, we've given the earlier date, which again wasn't in keeping with regulation. And people have every year cited that that date was the reason why they scheduled their vacation the following week. So we're hoping that if we reverse the way we
Community of
communicate this.
I get it now.
So if you have to read the small print to get the better date, maybe we'll have more people hold off a week.
I bet you don't. I bet you don't. I bet you still have people that
absolutely.
schedule their vacation.
But let me just verify. So the way it's written now on the 185-day calendar, the 24th for the high school is an early release.
Yes.
But in actuality, we hope it will be on the 17th would be an early release.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe you need a 2.
Actually, yeah, it used to say that. I don't, now that I'm looking at it, it didn't make it onto this. I don't know what happened.
That's why I.
Yeah, the number one note actually is supposed to, I
Cover both?
I can't imagine why it's not here. There's another sentence that says, in that case, the exams would be the 17th.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
We'll find that sentence and
Add it to
include it before we publish it.
I appreciate it.
Sorry about that, thank you.
Okay, any other calendar-related questions? One other calendar item that is in August, and therefore not on this calendar, is the back-to-school event that's taking place at Studley on Saturday, which is starting at 11 a.m. It's facilitated by Sodexo every year, sponsored by Sodexo. It looks like it's 11 to 1. The first 500 children will receive a free backpack. I think they have a blow-up thing.
It's a great time.
It is a good
Really.
thing. Mr. Sheehan brings his
Face
weekend
painting and-
weekend car.
Oh, I enjoy. I take my car. I take
Your
the
weekend
ride.
car, right?
Yeah.
Which you can have your photo taken in front of.
Take it for a ride.
It's a nice event, and it's always very, very well attended. So,
Yeah.
except for when there's a hurricane, at which point it's not. Which we have had that. All right, and now finally, transportation. Where we met last, we were clarifying that any student can apply for the fee-for-service. Routes are in the process of being developed, and the tiers will work as they always have with regard to students that live within the fee-for-service zone, and then students that are outside the fee-for-service zone. Any updates or anything we need to know about, Mr. Rose, with regard to?
Nothing significant. Routes have been forwarded to Attleboro Sun Chronicle and Larry Kessler.
Okay.
Will be published on Tuesday the 26th.
Okay.
A week from Tuesday. We're going to wait for the publishing to go in the newspaper, and then we'll post it on our website probably a week from Wednesday. The routes were prepared based on 27 vehicles without fee-for-service, without walkers. So we're going to have a 28th bus that we're going to be using to address those individuals that will be assigned to a bus, and notification will be made to as many fee-for-service students as possible next week, and as many walkers as next week. Fee-for-service first,
Yep.
walkers second.
Okay, and just to be very clear, everyone is eligible to apply. There are no guarantees. There are never
Correct.
guarantees, but we don't restrict applications. Mr. Withers.
Correct.
Have the notifications gone out to all the students that were told before that they couldn't apply, that they in fact can?
The answer is no. There's on the website on last Thursday, put up a notification of the message and a link to the actual file, the fee-for-service application file. A letter has been, frankly, what I was hoping we might be able to do is have like a reverse 911 call and just go to the walkers. We've got about 850. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that. So a letter has been prepared, and those letters will be mailed over the next couple of days. We're planning on a tentative deadline of August, a week from Thursday, the 28th of August, so that the walker parents who receive the letter for the first time and say, oh my gosh, I can apply, they should have at least 3 to 5 days to put in the application and submit. Many folks, based on the calls we've been getting, they're aware of the fact that they can submit an application.
Okay, and I think we should use every means possible to make sure that message is out there. So,
Agreed.
And again, the important caveat to the message is there are no guarantees, like and there've never been any guarantees. But if it's a matter of where to draw the line in terms of sending out a voicemail of that nature, it may be the case that we just want to send the voicemail out to everyone. There's probably something else we need to tell everybody, I imagine, right? I mean, there's got to be something other than, so if it's combined with that message, just to make sure that it's out there and it's clear, it might be a little bit of a belt and suspenders approach, but I wouldn't hesitate to do that. But the letter obviously will be a critical part as well. Anything else transportation related?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is that it? Are we ready to start school? Or?
Mr. Murphy,
Yes.
it should be, excuse me, but it should be
please.
stated that as we've played this game every single year about how many buses are and so forth, and adding buses in November, December, greater attention was placed there because we have greater numbers because of the Aspen program and what we've done prior to. So consequently, we feel very comfortable about what the number of buses are and how they're going to be utilized. So that's not going to be a mystery to anybody.
Sure.
At the same time, we're paying special attention to the fee-for-service students as well, that we're not looking at a 50% rate starting the first day of school. We're looking for far greater than that. I really don't want us looking at kids at fee-for-service in November.
Sure.
That's happened in other years.
Yep.
No. I want them on those buses as soon and as fast as possible and to get them into school in a timely manner. So we're working diligently with Bloom and what we have for data and Mr. Rose's department and so forth to accomplish those tasks, which are so important.
Sure, and we appreciate that. I think the one thing I would add is that we can, the system can be as efficient and as organized as humanly possible, and it's still, there's something human about it. And so, particularly at the beginning of the school year, there are going to be issues with regard to transportation. Everyone, families, staff, everyone should just be, prepared for that. We're gonna aim for fewer. And we're going to aim to resolve them in a more efficient manner than in the past. But we're not going to. I usually don't pitch a perfect game when it comes to transportation the first couple of weeks. So, okay. Does the administration have anything else related to the opening of school that we should be aware of? Okay, sounds good. Sounds like we're ready to go. We do have the proposed athletic trainer contract. That is before the committee for our consideration. Mr. Furtado, do you have anything to share on this?
Just for the committee's benefit, this is very consistent in terms of its cost with years prior. It's been in effect. Again, my first go around here, we started this, and it's been in effect probably for a good 10 years now. So.
Great. So I'll make a motion to approve the athletic trainer contract as presented to the committee.
Second.
Any discussion, Mr. Withers?
Just a clerical point in number 3. Says a term of approximately 2 years, commencing on August 1, 2014, and ending June 30th, 2017. Used to be 3 years, and that's consistent with the rest of the language.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think
Should
of
be
that.
3.
Sure. So with that note,
Yeah.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Okay, we have agenda that's gotten very messy. This is looks like a baseball scorecard at this point, with a lot of substitutions. Yeah, you think so? All right. Just a few quick announcements. I'm sorry. One last item related to the opening of school. The schedule of school committee meetings that I circulated after conferring with the subcommittee chairs. So I'll just make a motion to approve the school committee meeting calendar, both for the full committee and the subcommittees.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah,
Just with us.
I don't know, it's a little bit pertinent, I guess, but there's a chance that we'll have to call a special policy subcommittee meeting in the next few weeks with regard to the school safety plan, so that we can get that finalized at a September meeting. So we're not scheduled to meet until middle of September.
15th, I think.
Yeah, we're very likely we'll have to meet before then.
Sure. That's certainly understandable, and the subcommittees should feel free to meet at the discretion of those chairs. I just wanted to make sure that we had something in people's calendars, so when it can wait till a day that people have blocked out, we do. Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. I do have an announcement that the school committee has reached an agreement on a one-year contract with our Administrators Association. That was authorized at the executive session that took place last week, and I signed on behalf of the committee, and we certainly extend our gratitude to the members of the Administrators Association. On final note, I did receive, and the superintendent did as well, a communication from Representative Haro over the course of the past several weeks, and it was about an issue that I have followed up with in a conversation with the mayor, and I suspect it'll be part of the conversation that the administration will have tomorrow. It has to do with the $38 million bond bill that did pass in the state legislature and is now essentially has given the governor the authority to appropriate funds that could potentially benefit public school districts with regard to technology. What I've just stated is frankly the extent of our knowledge on the issue, and it's one that various organizations are looking into to sort of get a handle on what exactly this could potentially mean for the school district. At this point, it doesn't. It means that there's potential, but that's it. We don't know in terms of timing. We don't know in terms of specifics, and it's just something that we're going to have to follow up on. But I think it'll be part of the conversation between the superintendent and his staff and the mayor and his staff tomorrow. And it's one that we'll keep an eye on. All right. Okay. So at this time, I'll make a motion for the school committee to convene an executive session to conduct strategies with regard to negotiations with union personnel. The committee will not be returning in public session.
Second.
Mr. Storrs?
Yes.
Mr. Withers?
Yes.
Mrs. Scales?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy? Yes. Mr. Larson?
Yes.
Ms. Singer?
Yes.
Mrs. Zito? And we are in executive session. Take a 5-minute break.
And he said it, and then so I was like, well, that was my, and I wanted to say, no, I'm certain your interpretation was accurate.